Welcome to the Stimpack Podcast. Stimpack is a Haiti-focused think tank and interventional NGO.
Day 2, contact with Mary. The next morning brought little action. A guard came in and took our bucket of water used for bathing and flushing, filled it, and then returned it around 9 a.m. It was still quiet outside. No gunfire yet. Around 11 a.m., Chef Jeff came in and gave me my phone and told me to call my negotiator. I hadn't realized it, but the role of negotiator is a terribly heavy burden to carry. It's a horrible thing to ask of someone. I hadn't thought of Bill as my negotiator because I was hoping he was simply going to make a few calls and get me out of this place. So when Chef Jeff told me to call my negotiator, I called Bill. He answered, and I told Bill that Chef Jeff wanted to talk to him. Bill responded sheepishly, and that was unexpected. Something I would think about again and again. Was Bill simply insecure about his language skills, or was it his inability to help me? The latter being far more consequential. I handed the phone to Chef Jeff, who proceeded to demand $2 million immediately, or they would kill me. Bill said he understood, but then said he'd call us back. Chef Jeff disappeared. I was still hopeful that Bill might still come through for me, but was losing confidence fast. Around lunchtime, Chef Jeff opened his own door, but only a crack, so we couldn't see his face. He told the Toussaints that they had a rendezvous scheduled. That meant the kidnappers had a ransom agreement with their family negotiator, and they had agreed to a meeting to deliver the money. Once the money was delivered, the gang would bring the money to the chef's boss to count it, so the chef. If all was in order, then they would be put into a vehicle and driven down the hill to the main road through Martisson to meet their family representative and presumably driven to safety. How do you guys know if anyone ever gets out alive? How can you be sure that they don't take the money and just shoot you out back without us knowing? I asked the Toussaints. We've spoken to other captives, and they've gotten out before, and they've made phone calls back to us, so we know they get out. With that, I was reassured. When the Toussaints explained this to me, I was thrilled for them. They were getting out. After a month in miserable captivity, they were going to be free in a matter of hours. But they did not seem more than mildly pleased. I inquired why. They had been here before. About 2 weeks earlier, their family paid a ransom to someone, and the gang claimed that it was a thief that intercepted the money. They blamed the mishap on the Toussaint's courier and demanded the ransom be paid again. The Toussaints were heartbroken. So this time, they were hopeful, but not convinced that they were getting out. Sometime around noon, Chef Jeff cracked the door again and handed a phone to Jean Toussaint. It was his negotiator on the other end, trying to verify that they were meeting the correct gangster this time, rather than giving the money to a thief again. By talking with Jean on the same call as Chef Jeff, he could be sure that he was meeting with the right person. Chef Jeff claimed that his phone was getting hacked by employees at Digicel, and they were listening to his calls and then giving the negotiator's phone number to thieves that would then be posing as kidnappers and taking the ransom money. I never bought that explanation, but rather presumed it was an inside job by one of the other members of the gang. I would later realize that it was all just a ruse to get families to pay twice, and not some sign of subversion internally. Jean spoke with his negotiator for about 10 seconds and then handed the phone back to Chef Jeff. The door quickly shut, and Jean and Abby looked at each other and breathed deep. We all did the same. We were all hoping for their release. partly out of genuine desire for their freedom, but also because of the hope it gave us all that perhaps we would be next. The time went by slowly for us all, but I know that it was excruciatingly long for the Toussaints. While we waited, Jean asked if there was anything I wanted him to do for me when they got out. I asked him to call my wife and tell her that I was okay. I was being treated well and not to worry. We didn't have anything to write on, so I taught him the same little jingle I used to teach my young children how to remember Mary's phone number in case of emergencies. It worked. He got it quick. Sometime in the early afternoon, Chef Jeff knocked on his own door and yelled, "Mettez souliers," which means "get your shoes on." They were getting out. Jean and Abby popped up and began gathering their things and hugging and shaking hands with everyone. You could see that they were not yet celebrating. A month of captivity seemed to have stolen their optimism. They gave me their mostly empty 32-ounce water bottle on their way out. I didn't appreciate it yet, but I would come to depend on it. And then there were 4 of us. We were all very high following their departure, but it was short-lived. Kervin was on his 23rd day. He too had his money, quote, lost. He was hopeful that his family would find the money again, but knew it would be at least a few days before they could scrape it together. Stephanie was hoping for a second phone call to her family, and I was hoping to hear back from Bill. Instead, Chef Jeff returns with street food and water bags, little 8-ounce plastic bags of drinking water popular in Haiti. Instead of water bottles, they have little sacks. He's being generous. He also brings in another fan. It has a built-in battery to allow it to continue blowing for a few hours after the generator stops at the end of the evening. That means that we can have a fan blowing during the heat of the day until the power comes on at night. He nails the fan up to the door jamb surrounding the door to his room and points it toward our beds. This could be a great help. Then really outdoes himself when he comes out with 3 clean bed sheets. The significance of these 2 upgrades cannot be overstated. Everyone tries to beat the heat throughout the day and through the night. I do it by laying on the mattress that the Toussaints vacated. There is a 6-inch gap between the mattress and the painted cement wall. I lay along the wall with one shoulder on the mattress and one on the wall so as to allow the air to circulate under my back and the occasional cool air breeze to come through the window, hit the thick red curtain draped over the window above me, and then hopefully fall on my face and chest. During downtime, my thoughts oscillate between negotiation strategy and my wife and other loved ones. I couldn't imagine my wife's terror. I wanted so badly for her to know that I was okay. The hardest part about being kidnapped was imagining the grief of my wife and family. If I could just convince her that I was okay, then she would be okay. And if she was okay, then I would be okay. It wasn't until nearly 7 p.m. that Chef Jeff returns to the room with several phones in his hand and gives me mine. Chef Jeff is at this point behaving far more civilly than the day before, allowing me to think far more clearly. I'm grateful. At 6:54 p.m., I call Bill through WhatsApp. He gives me the number of someone he trusts in Haiti and tells me he's going to help you. I try to get him to elaborate. Who is this guy? Is he a gang leader? Is he a negotiator? Bill won't elaborate. I give the number to Chef Jeff and ask him to test the number to confirm. He calls it on the kidnapper phone. It's not Chef Jeff's personal phone, but a neutral phone that all the kidnappers share. No one picks up the phone. I call Bill to confirm. Bill says to try again. Chef Jeff tries again. And a Haitian male with a deep voice answers. He is calm. Chef Jeff tells him he will call him back later and hangs up. I am hopeful for progress, but it's clear to me at this point that nothing will be happening soon. I will likely be here for at least a few days. Chef Jeff lingers a moment. I ask if I can call my wife. He pauses and then agrees. He's not being kind. He has clearly calculated that Mary needs confirmation of my kidnapping. When she picks up, she's clearly panicked. I try to calm her and assure her that I'm okay. I try to convince her that the conditions are similar to other uncomfortable places from previous projects in Haiti, that I'm prepared to endure it. I tell her to be patient. She asks if they are feeding me. I say yes. In fact, we had received 2 meals and water that day. And that was a luxury that would never happen again during my 43 days there. It was difficult to convince Mary, and she's clearly presumed I'm being treated poorly. I attempt to convince her. I mentioned the other good people that were with me, and that they were good and kind. I mentioned that we now have clean sheets even, in an attempt to cue her to the likelihood that I would be there for quite a while, thinking, I don't know, maybe a week or so. I mentioned my favorite Masterclass and the need for patience. My favorite Masterclass was the Chris Voss Masterclass on negotiation tactics. He also wrote a book called Never Split the Difference, of which I was a significant fan. And so I was trying to cue Mary of the rule book, so to speak, while I was in captivity. I knew that we couldn't pay a ransom too quickly, as that would give the gang the understanding that there was more cash available for additional ransom. I wanted Mary to be ready for that game. I would later learn that call to have created all kinds of confusion. Nothing I said was believed, some believing that I was trying to deliver a coded message, that everything that I said was the opposite of the truth. This was the beginning of what would become a pattern of miscommunication between me and everyone else on the outside.
Waking up to my new reality is so jarring. I barely slept. Unsure of what I will find outside my bedroom door, I walk out and face the kids. The younger 4 are up and watching TV. We're playing hooky, so they are enjoying the extra TV time, or so I tell myself. At least something's distracting them. I remember that Jeff's brother is on his way. He lives 2 hours away, and he is headed towards us that morning. His wife has had a baby the night before, the same day that Jeff was taken, and I'm a little concerned he is on his way to me while leaving his wife and new baby behind in the hospital. I can tell that when he arrives, he just wants to be useful. We all do, but it seems impossible. There are no real solutions yet, and unfortunately wouldn't come for a long time. Jeff's parents, who are serving an LDS mission in Charleston, South Carolina, are also on their way, driving most of that day to get to us by the evening. The knowledge that they are coming is bringing me some peace. The need for me to be completely available for phone calls all day is beginning to become very obvious and also daunting because of the needs of my 7 children. So the fact that Grandma and Grandpa are on their way is a big relief. It's also comforting to have them to counsel with, as I am not used to making huge decisions alone. Jeff and I always did all of that together. However, I would soon learn to become very good at it and have to make more huge and scary decisions than I ever thought possible. That evening, my phone rang, and it was Jeff's number on the screen. My heart stopped, and I ran into my room to take the call, not telling anyone who it was so that I would be left alone to focus. I remember he sounded so weird, very high-pitched voice, as if he was trying to pretend to be him. It threw me off, and I immediately felt like he was being listened to and that he was not able to say what he really wanted to say. He told me about the Toussaints that were there with him and others that were taken the same day as him. He said he was fine and being well taken care of, all of which seemed to me to be a big lie. He mentioned the Masterclass that we had been watching recently together about negotiations by Chris Voss, and how what we are going through now is just like that. I remember him saying it could be a few more days, and at that point in time, I wasn't even sure how I would survive one more day. Little did we both know then how long it would actually take.
We hope you enjoy this episode of the Stimpack Podcast and will subsequently share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for listening. This podcast has been brought to you by Stimpack Inc., copyright 2024. All rights reserved.